In this video, I'm going to introduce the idea of classes and objects. We'll start with an empty processing sketch. In this case, I've written my setup and draw functions, and I've used Python's pass to indicate to do nothing. Now, the first thing I want to do is I think I'm going to do this example around just a simple round ball that I want to have follow me around the screen. So I'll start by creating some variables for the x and y positions. I'm going to set those to the value none because I can't set them to anything else until I've actually created some, like the screen in setup. So width and height aren't defined until we get into the setup function. I have to say that those are global variables because they're defined outside of my function. And I'm going to just say that I want an ellipse that's 50 by 50. While I'm at it, let's make it a 400 by 400 screen. See what that looks like. There we go. It's a ball. It's at a random location. If I run it again, I should find that it is at a different random location. So far, so good. All right. So what next? I think that I'd like that for the ball to follow my mouse. So I'm going to say that if the ball x position is less than the mouse x position, I want to increase the ball's position by 1. Nothing happening. Aha! So if my mouse is to the right of the ball, it goes to the right. If my ball x position is greater than. Oh, that makes sense. If the ball is to my right, then subtract 1. Okay, so if the mouse is to my right, add 1. If the mouse is to my left, subtract 1. Now let's do the same thing for y. All right, so I'm going to say if the mouse y position is greater than my ball position, I want to go up. If the ball y position is less than my mouse, I want to go down. And so now I should have the ball following me around the screen. This is pretty good. It's kind of like an Etch-a-Sketch. I don't think anybody knows what an Etch-a-Sketch is anymore, but they're very satisfying. Okay. Now, I think I probably need a clear. Good. Looks a little more like a ball or maybe a spotlight chasing me around a dark screen. Could be the start of a James Bond movie. All right. Now I've got a bunch of code here. I think I'd like to be able to, I think the ball to be able to be a different speed. So I'm going to create one more global variable. I'm going to remember to add it to my list of globals. And I'm going to replace the number 1 with speed. So that way, I'll run the code again. It should do the same thing because I didn't change the value, but if I come up here and make my speed 2, it should be the case that the ball will now appear to move faster. Good. That is what I was hoping for. So at this point, I have a reasonably complete implementation of a ball that can follow me around the screen. It has an x and a y and a speed variable. I make sure that I say those are global in any functions that I want to use them. I initialize those values. I have some conditional statements that make use of them. And finally, I use those values to draw the ball on the screen. Now our next step is going to be to open a new sketch. I'm going to create a new tab. I'm going to create a file called ball.py. In it, I write class ball. I'm going to introduce the idea of classes by demonstrating them. From that file, I'm going to import everything. So I say from ball, import star. And I'll write my normal setup and draw functions. If I run it, nothing happens, because really, nothing does anything in this sketch so far. But we've got this thing called a class. What that class is going to do is it's going to represent the setup and the draw functions of a ball. So first, I know my ball needs an x, So I'm going to put that in my ball. I know it needs a y, so I'm going to put that in my ball. And that's a good start. Now I also am going to need a setup function. But this is a little different. Classes have a setup function that's called init, with 2 underscores on either side. But you should think of it as setup for the ball. It also takes one parameter. Every function in a class takes one parameter called self, and it refers to the ball that you are going to be referencing as you run your code. We're almost going to have to see that before we understand it, I think. But what happens is if I want to set the x of the ball, I have to say my own self, I want to set my ball x position, and my own self, I want to set my ball y position. So this is very similar. Why am I deleting things? This is very similar to what you would do in the sketch, but now you're doing it, if you will, inside the ball. So in our sketch proper, we're now going to create a variable called b1. I'm going to declare it to be global, but I'm going to say that it is equal to a ball. And a ball is going to be a thing that can handle its own setup and its own drawing. So there's the setup. We didn't see anything on the screen because we don't yet have a draw. The draw has to be able to refer to itself. All right, so given our self, we want to draw an ellipse at the x and y coordinate, and we want it to be 50 by 50 in diameter. All right, so let's see. So that means I need to make my ball global in the draw function, and I'm going to then ask the ball to draw itself. The dot or period means go into the ball and run the function called draw. I'm going to go ahead and make this a 400 by 400 screen, just like my other example. Right, so we can see that it is currently positioning the ball randomly. When we set up the ball, when we run our init function, it randomly assigns it a location. And then in our sketches draw, we ask b1 to please run its draw function. That's what b1.draw means. Now, if I want to have the full behavior of my ball, I have to have that whole mouse chasing thing happen. So I'm going to go ahead and copy my, I'm going to copy it the old-fashioned way by typing it. I'm going to say that I want to know that if my own self's x value is less than the mouse x, I will increment that by 1. So when I talk about self.ballx, I'm referring to the variable ballx for a given ball. And really, when I write the code, the ball, I think of the ball, it as the ball that is me. Right? So I'm not changing the, not an else, an elif. I'm not changing the code other than to make sure that my variable reference is correct. So I'm going to say self.ballx equals self.ballx minus 1. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to do the same thing for y. So I'm going to change my x's to y's just like I did earlier. So when I'm done, I should have a ball that can chase me around the screen. Save and run. Okay, it chases me, and it's not going up. It is not going up. Is this because I'm using classes? No, it's because I forgot to change mouse X to mouse Y. All right, let's try running that again. Doesn't matter which sketch you're on when you run it. There we go. I've got my little magic Etch-a-Sketch all over again. It may be that in the main draw function, I want to have a clear, and I can run. Now I've got my spotlight back. At this point, I have recreated my original sketch using classes and objects. Now this plain white spot on the screen doesn't do it for me. And I feel like I need something else. So I'm going to create a color. I'm going to call it C1. I'm going to pass that as a parameter to my ball. if I pass a parameter to the ball, that's the same as passing that parameter to the init. So then I'm going to say that I want my self's color to be equal to the parameter C. That suggests I need another variable in my class called color. And then I'm going to set my fill to my own self's color. So I set my self to the variable color. That is my self's color, which I set equal to C, which is that parameter. And if I trace it further back, that is that parameter right there, which I define as the color red. And now I have a red ball. Interesting. So now what do I want to do? I need another ball. So I declare a variable b2. I make sure that I declare it to be global. And I'm going to make it a different color. I'm going to make it yellow. So b2 is equal to ball that has color 2. I add it to my global list down below, and I then say, b2, could you please draw yourself? I hit save and run. And now I have 2 balls. And once they overlap, you can't tell. So if they overlap, let's see, yes, so I've got ball 1 that's red and ball 2 that's yellow. And I ask ball 1 to draw itself, and I ask ball 2 to draw itself. But what's really a problem is I need them to be different speeds. I need to be able to pass a speed parameter to my balls. So that way ball 1 has color 1 and ball 2 has color 2, but they have 2 different speeds. So I'm going to add another parameter and another variable to myself. So every ball keeps track of its own speed. So I say speed gets set to my self.speed, and then down here I'm going to say self.speed instead of 1. So now when I create a ball, I create the ball and it has a speed. So one of them is slower and one of them is faster. If I want a third ball that has a different color and a different speed, I create a new variable for it. And I make sure that I have a color 3, which I think I'll make that's probably magenta. All right, I'm going to make it slower than the others. And I come down here and I add it to my global list. And I ask it to draw itself, just like I did before. I run it and I get an error because I forgot to make ball 3 global in setup. Each one of these balls on the screen is what we refer to as an object. It is an instance of a class. The class describes all things of its type. So my class for ball describes how balls behave, and when I create a new ball, it's a new instance of a ball that can then interact and move around in the world.